Hey, amazing viewers, I love connecting with you all around the world. Stay with me until the end, because what I'm about to share will leave you inspired and ready to take control of your own life. In today's story, you'll hear about an incredible twist that no one saw coming. Also, if this is your first time here, press the subscribe button and join our incredible journey. The sun was beginning to dip beneath the horizon, casting long golden shadows over the two-lane highway that stretched through rural Georgia. Monica Trenton, her fingers lightly tapping against the steering wheel of her black Dodge Charger, felt the exhaustion settle deep into her bones. It had been a long day in court as a key witness for a major federal case. She was ready to go home, to unwind, to rest, and to leave the weight of the day behind. But something didn't feel right. For the past 5 miles, a black and white patrol car had been trailing her, no sirens, no flashing lights, just lingering behind her in the rearview mirror. It was a small town. Out here, people didn't often get pulled over unless they gave someone a reason to look, but she knew better than to let her guard down. As a DEA agent, she had crossed paths with local cops who were more concerned with flexing their power than serving and protecting. Monica had been in these situations before. Her eyes flicked from the rearview mirror to the road ahead. She kept her speed steady at 55 miles per hour, matching the posted limit, no sudden moves. She had been trained for moments like this. The long shadows of the late afternoon were growing longer, but it wasn't the setting sun that put a knot in her stomach. It was the way the patrol car stayed just behind her, without purpose. Too close. With a slow exhale, she glanced at the rearview mirror again. There it was, the flash of red and blue lights, the unmistakable sign of a traffic stop. She wasn't surprised. She signaled, eased her car to the gravel shoulder, and shut off the engine. She could feel the tension in her shoulders as she set her hands on the wheel, knowing what would come next. The officers, 2 of them, approached from either side of the car. One was tall and lean, wearing sunglasses with a cocky grin plastered across his face. The other was shorter, stockier, with a mid-40s build, his uniform straining a little over his belly. Both were well-groomed, their badges gleaming in the fading sunlight. But the smiles that spread across their faces as they came closer weren't friendly. They were the smiles of men who thought they had control, who thought they could manipulate anyone they chose. The tall officer, Officer Ryan Whitmore, tapped on the window, his knuckles rapping sharply. Monica rolled it down slowly, keeping her expression neutral. "Evening, ma'am. License and registration, please," he said, his voice clipped, formal, but with an edge of something darker lurking behind it. Monica pulled the documents from the center console and handed them over. She didn't flinch when he barely glanced at them before looking back at her with a crooked smirk. "You in a hurry, ma'am?" Whitmore asked, his tone almost playful. "Nope," she replied, her voice even calm. "You didn't see that stop sign a few miles back." She kept her tone light, but her eyes remained steady. She knew exactly what was happening here. She wasn't some helpless civilian. She was a federal agent, and she had been in situations like this before. The game was beginning. The second officer, Cole Barrett, circled around to the passenger side of the car, his hand resting casually on his duty belt. Monica's instincts were on high alert. She could feel the pressure building as the moment stretched out. She had been in enough standoffs to recognize when the tension would snap. Without warning, Officer Whitmore's voice broke through the air. "Step out of the vehicle, ma'am," he ordered. Monica stayed calm, her face unreadable, as she unclipped her seatbelt and slowly opened the door. Her boots crunched on the gravel as she stepped out, keeping her posture relaxed, every muscle trained to stay in control. "You got drugs in that car?" Whitmore asked, his eyes narrowing. Monica's lips barely curled into a smile. "You're joking, right?" she asked, her voice steady despite the absurdity of the accusation. Neither of the officers smiled back. The tall officer's grin faded. His face grew harder, more determined. "We'll see about that," he muttered. Monica's pulse stayed steady, but inside, her mind was working quickly. This wasn't a simple traffic stop. This was something else. The officers weren't just stopping her. They were setting her up. They were trying to frame her, and she knew it. As Barrett's hand hovered near his taser, Monica braced herself. They hadn't realized it yet, but they had just picked the wrong person to mess with. What they didn't know was that Monica Trenton wasn't just any driver passing through their small town. She was a DEA agent, and her training, her experience, and her resolve were about to turn their world upside down. But for now, she had to play their game. The gravel crunched beneath Monica's boots as she stood outside her car, her hands still steady on the wheel. But inside her, everything was shifting. She was a DEA agent. Her world was built on navigating the gray areas, on controlling her responses, on knowing when to play the game and when to make her move. But the game she was about to play wasn't just about taking control. It was about surviving. As Officer Whitmore approached, the look on his face was all too familiar. He was confident, too confident. That cocky smirk of his, like he already had the upper hand. She could see it in his eyes. He thought she was just another suspect, just another person he could bully, manipulate, and walk all over. She wasn't. Without another word, Officer Whitmore motioned to Barrett, who had circled behind her, his hand resting just above his taser. Monica's gut tightened. This was no longer just about the traffic stop. They were trying to get her to react. They wanted her to lose control. But the key to survival wasn't reacting. It was knowing when to stay calm and when to act. "Turn around," Barrett barked, his voice gruff and commanding. Monica's head tilted slightly. She could almost hear the words echoing in her head. "This is it. Don't flinch." She turned to face him, keeping her hands relaxed at her sides. "On what grounds?" she asked, her voice calm, controlled. The officers didn't answer. They didn't need to. They had already decided that she was guilty, and they weren't interested in hearing anything she had to say. Whitmore's expression hardened. "Turn around. Hands behind your back," he said, the command now carrying an edge. Monica's mind raced, calculating her next move. Years of training, countless encounters with corrupt officers, and a life dedicated to bringing criminals to justice all flashed through her mind. This wasn't the first time she had faced an adversary who thought they could break her. She had been in worse situations, but this was different. These two weren't just trying to intimidate her. They were trying to ruin her. They were setting her up, framing her. She stepped back, her voice sharp. "I'm a federal agent." Barrett's hand twitched at his belt, but it wasn't a taser that came out. It was a pair of handcuffs. He grabbed her wrist, and she snapped her arm away. The coldness in his eyes chilled her to the bone. "You're not getting away with this," Monica said, her voice unwavering. "That's assault on a federal officer." The air between them thickened as Whitmore's grin faded, replaced by a steely glare. "Lady, I don't care who you say you are," Whitmore sneered. "We've got probable cause." "You fit a description." "A description?" Monica almost laughed. She knew exactly what that meant. They had chosen her. They were targeting her. And she knew what came next. The officers turned away, leaving her no room to argue, and radioed for backup. "We've got a suspicious vehicle. Possible drug transport. Requesting K-9 unit." Whitmore's voice crackled through the radio. Monica's stomach churned. Of course, they would plant something in her car. Drugs. Maybe meth. Maybe fentanyl. Something that was easy to justify, easy to convict. Something that would stick. The system was rigged, and they knew it. But what they didn't know was that Monica wasn't about to let them get away with it. The second officer, Barrett, grabbed her by the arm, tugging her toward the patrol car. Monica kept her steps even, but her heart pounded faster. They were underestimating her. They didn't realize that she had dealt with situations like this before. They didn't know the kind of fight they had just picked. As they shoved her into the back of the patrol car, Monica's eyes flickered toward the trunk of her Dodge Charger, where Whitmore was already rummaging through her things. He looked up, holding something up to the fading light. It was exactly what she expected. A brick of something, vacuum sealed, a clear attempt to frame her. "Look at what we got here," Whitmore called to Barrett, his grin stretching wider. Monica's pulse remained steady, but her mind was already working a few steps ahead. This was part of their routine. Pick a target, plant the evidence, then sit back and watch as the system did its job. But Monica wasn't just another target. Her hands clenched into fists, not out of fear, but out of determination. The officers had no idea what they had just done. They thought they had the upper hand, but they had just made a fatal mistake. They were about to learn who Monica Trenton really was. But for now, she had to play it cool. She had to wait. Let them make their move. Let them dig their own graves. Because when the time came, they wouldn't know what hit them. Monica sat silently in the holding cell, her back straight, eyes focused on the cold, concrete wall. The clank of the metal door behind her echoed in the hollow space, the only sound in the room besides the occasional shuffle of a passing deputy's boots. It was a familiar feeling. This isolation, the sense